The trolley provides me a space to be able to do this long term. This is my first home. When I saw the trolley for the first time, I just laughed. Like, how silly is that? When I first bought the trolley, I actually thought that it would be a relatively straightforward build. Turns out I was very wrong. Most of the materials in here are from the early 1900s or the late 1800s. The two things that I really like by the entranceway is I have a horn and a bell, depending on the day, whatever sound I want to make. My name is Eric, and this is Squally the Trolley. Before I became nomadic, was working in the auto industry, working on motors, and loved just getting dirty and fixing things, but the culture just was crushing to me. I think I did not thrive in that environment. And I'd go on these weekend trips and I just was like so alive. I always felt like kind of this like the town gremlin, like I was just living in my car and other people weren't. It's not really commonplace in the Northeast for people to live in a vehicle, but it was probably one of the happiest times of my life. And I was like, man, I think I want to do this long term. Like, I'm ready to invest time into my forever home, so to speak, a house. Like, I wanted something to live in. And so I was actually looking for like a bus or something like that, and I was searching on Craigslist and I saw the trolley. When I saw the trolley for the first time, I just laughed. Like, how silly is that? I went by, took a look at it, and it was like really heavily under-maintained and abused. I could tell right away no one cared for it. I made them an offer and they said yeah. And now I got the trolley. I've been living full-time in it for a little over 2 years. When I first bought the trolley, I actually thought that it would be a relatively straightforward build. What I didn't expect was that everything mechanical would also need to be addressed, replaced, repaired. There's a part of the build where I had to think, is this worth it for me? I thought it would be good as is, and turns out I was very wrong. Within a short while, I had tires off, axles apart, windows on the ground, body panels exposed, the roof half disassembled, no floor, and that had to happen. I didn't do that unnecessarily, it was mandatory. Like, the amount of rot that had occurred behind the walls, just black and mushrooms and growth and little kind of wiggly bits that were all kind of like splayed out. Like, the growth had just like overrun everything, so I had to. There's no way I could live in this. And the deeper I got, the more I found. It didn't stop. It took me a little over 6 years, and that was working on it, I'd say, seasonally. I'd work for around 6 months out of the year or so, and then I would take 4 to 6 months and work on the trolley after that work season had ended. Most of the trolley is built with recycled, salvaged, and just found materials. An unfortunate part of the modern building culture is just to throw items away. There's a lot of waste. For me, when I'm on job sites, if I see a piece of wood that I really like, I'll put it to the side, and then when I clock out at the end of the day, I'll de-nail it and store it and take care of it, so I'll bring it home with me. But I definitely would say most of the stuff in here was found for free. The initial cost of the trolley being around $9,000. All of the build for the interior living space was probably around $32,000. And then the cost of the motor and mechanics of it was probably in the realm of $16,000. Really psyched on the way it is now, and there's nothing I'd change about it. I think it's, for me personally, it flows so well, and I can't imagine it being any other way. So this is Squally the Trolley. Squally is a great American trolley company produced body put onto a 1994 P3500 chassis. It's 25 feet long, and it comes in at a little over 13,500 pounds. So some of the key features of the trolley that I really like, it's got swoop-de-doop windows, and it was made in the era where they really valued quality. So there's no plastic on this trolley, it is all metal and wood. The roof of the trolley is fiberglass, which was rather challenging to work with. A lot of it had become really dry and brittle, so I had to repair quite a lot of the roof. Above it, I do have 4 solar panels to give me 400 watts of solar. I have 3 roof vents and an exhaust port for my fireplace, which all goes through the roof. So the front of the trolley has 3 windows, and each of which has their own window wiper. The really odd thing about it is when you're using the wiper blades, they're all non-synchronized, so they're all cattywampus. It's kind of fun because every 15 minutes they get one very satisfying uniform stroke, but then they go back to being all over the place. Under the hood, I went through a process of converting the 454 that was in here to a Gen 4 LS engine. It's probably pushing over 550 horsepower. It'll cruise down the road at 75 though, all day. The trolley is now a hot rod for sure. The original motor that came with the trolley was an absolute gas guzzler. When I had it, it probably got around 4 miles per gallon. And then now after doing the LS swap, I more than doubled it, and I now get a little over 10 miles per gallon. I did a few neat things in here to make my life a little easier, as I have this area to store extra fluids. When I first got the trolley, it had all of this wiring that was incredibly confusing. It had no wiring diagram and very complicated circuitries. Since the trolley operated in Maryland and it was a ferry service trolley, so it was on the water, the amount of galvanic corrosion really pushed my hand, where every terminal and every wire was so corroded. All of it had to have new connectors and new wiring for everything. The kombucha bottle here is kind of just a little bit of hot rod flair. I've always really valued and admired hot rods and rat rods for their clever use of materials. So this is a glass bottle, and I fitted this kombucha bottle into here for my radiator overflow, and just brings a smile to my face when I see it. I've always wanted a hot rod, but I've also wanted a house, and I kind of just made them all in one. So side dump exhaust just kind of made sense, and this is the little flare just to show the stature that it has. Above here is my outdoor shower. So this opens up, which has a on-demand hot water. This is my water fill right here. It goes into a 40-gallon tank. I'm really psyched on this. This is where I keep my climbing gear. So in here, I have it set up with a drawer that has all mechanical slides. There's no bearings or anything like that. So over here in the back, we have a bike. It's a DR200, which is my commuter. Gets around 88 miles per gallon, is what I use to commute in places and access spots that the trolley I just wouldn't want to take to. So I'll take this out to go climbing, or to go out to some hot springs, or to take it to work or to the grocery store. So now we're on the driver's side of the trolley, which this side shows a lot of the body seams and things that were really challenging to work with. And the trolley, it's kind of like carnival equipment. I think it's meant to just really look cool, but once you get into it, some of the construction is a little questionable. So with a lot of these body seams, they're just butted up to each other. So I had to drill out the rivets, take the body panels apart, and put seam sealer before I put them back together, which just was more effort in order to make it to baseline. So I think with a lot of buses and RVs, they're meant to just be dry, whereas the trolley, I think, was really designed to be put into a garage at the end of the day versus being out in the elements. It certainly did not have the overlapped body panels to shed water. So the ground clearance of the trolley, I think, is really good for what it is. I do take it off-road and I certainly drive it, but I did put airbags in the suspension in order to bring them up, so there is that. The front door and entrance area had a significant amount of damage, so I had to redo the entire entrance area. The doors are boxed steel, and then they're faced with top cuts of wood that I got from a barn build. And then I had these handles donated to me from an antique shop owner, and they're still maintained their bifold, and they do lock. It's got a modified Fox lock, which goes up into the top of the door jamb, and they're the entrance into my home. So come on in. So now we're on the inside of Squally. The two things that I really like by the entranceway is I have a horn and a bell, depending on the day, whatever sound I want to make. So over here we have the gear room. I got some of my climbing ropes, I got some climbing shoes, all kind of tucked into these dynamite boxes, as well as the sarcophagus over here, which, well, we won't talk about that in this video. Most of the materials in here are from the early 1900s or the late 1800s. This right here being a radio. I cut it and modified it so that it houses a lot of my light switches for the lights in here. And I put a door on it so I could access a lot of my systems. Behind here is where I have my diesel heater, water filters, and some of my electric circuit breakers. Moving on to the galley here, this is where I cook all my food. This is all made almost exclusively out of things that I've just found. The perimeter here being from a bed frame. I found it on the side of the road. It was a very beautiful bed setup. However, a corner of it had been damaged. So I was able to take that and just use all the good materials. This sink came from an old vanity set. I was able to find it once again on the side of the road. Really grateful to have built the trolley in a spot where I think a lot of people don't value putting time in to restore items that just need a little bit of TLC. So I have this little sign by my sink here, which brings me a good chuckle. It's from an old golf course. I found it in my perusings of different barns and other structures, and was donated to me. So I love to cook, and one of my favorite things to do is to make a meal, come down here, have a nice candlelit dinner and share it with somebody. I have this 3-burner stove with an oven, came out of a sailboat. It's got pot holders as well, so all my pots stay stationary when I'm driving. Living in a small space, I really value the items that I interact with. This light over here, it's actually from an old Pullman rail cart, and it was a kerosene wick lantern, and I removed the kerosene mechanism and installed a socket, and that's where I put my lighting inside of. Over here I have a Dometic fridge. I do find that it is a little bit small for me, however I was limited due to my space, and this is the one that I had to go with. This is where I keep a lot of my dry goods. These are kind of the things that really dictated the way that the build laid out. There's only so much space you have in here, so I was limited by the width of the fridge, the stove, the sink, and I really wanted to use these because I like the color of the wood, the hues, and just the aesthetic. I was really wanted a vertical cabinet. And they all have these soft close features, which helps to keep them from opening when I drive, and then on top of that I can close the door and it keeps everything in place. I have another supplemental heater over here. I took this out of another conversion van and put it into this space. It's a propane fireplace. It adds a lot of nice ambiance when it's in use. However, in this space here, I primarily use the diesel heater. The diesel air heater puts out a lot more heat, uses minimal fuel, I think it's just far more reliable. So the trolley has a few pretty schwanky characteristics, one of those being the brackets for the grab bars, and those are some of the things that really drove the aesthetics of the trolley build here. I really had to build in order to kind of complement that aesthetic, and that was admittedly not my style, but I had to kind of listen to the trolley and build what it wanted to be billed as. So for the main source of my lighting, I have these 2 overhead chandeliers. They're way over the top and super outrageous, and I'm here for every bit of it. The chandeliers, when I first installed them, had a chain, which when I was stationary in the trolley before the engine was complete, I thought it was really funny because they'd move. Once I became mobile and on the road, however, it became so bad that they would actually swing and hit the ceiling. In order to remedy that, I took 2 different lamps and broke apart the stem section and was able to incorporate those into the chandelier to make it one fixed item so that it doesn't swing anymore. So back here we have my first ever bed that I've bought as an adult. I've been living in vehicles for a little over 10 years now, and it's always been on a piece of plywood or a thermarest or a yoga mat and some foam, and this is the most comfortable bed I've ever been on, and is a proper sleeping quarters. For my clothes storage, I have a lot of different trunks and cabinets. One of my more favorite ones, and ones I use the most, is the one underneath my bed. I have it set up on tracks. I'm rather particular with the way I like my space to be, so I wanted to make sure that every time I put it back, it just returned back to its home. Over here, we have a little closet area. Once again, I have another piece of climbing gear just to keep that from opening. So I can just quickly turn that to the side, and access some of my nicer clothes that come out when we're having some special party nights. I really tried to make it look like the items in here kind of grew and were meant to be in this place, but they were far from it. This right here is a top piece from a piece of flooring. This over here is from some cabinets. This is a table leaf, a bed frame, piece of flooring, another piece of flooring, another table leaf, another piece of flooring, and this over here, well, this is just an old cranberry box. Also on some sleds. We have the dining area, and this also is a zone that I built very specific for one of my best friends who's 6'2", and I wanted to make sure that this could transform into a bed for him. So this right here is a old carom board. I have it on 2 French cleats, which really easily, with the removal of 5 screws, comes out, gets lowered onto the other cleat, and then re-secured to the wall. It's got 2 support brackets as well, and then that transforms into a bed. So I wanted more storage in the trolley, and I was trying to think of clever ways to add storage that also looked good, and I've really wanted to build these tambour doors. And I was driving through the streets of my hometown and found a dumpster where they were doing a bunch of flooring remodeling, and I was able to take all of this oak tongue and groove flooring, mill it so I took the tongue and the groove off, and then on the other side I glued a piece of canvas. And the mechanism works really well. It's never bound on me, it doesn't make much noise, and it's made almost entirely out of scrap materials. On the second story, we have these windows that are all around here, many of which were leaking when I originally got the trolley, so one by one I took them out, resealed them, and put them back in. They allow for a lot of really nice natural light to come through. One thing I have noticed is that the trolley does have some pretty significant temperature swings due to all the windows in here. It's essentially a fish tank on wheels. So what I do have is I have 3 max air fans that try to remove a lot of that hot air. They work really well, however they have this like horrible plastic white trim, so what I did was I took a picture frame and carefully trimmed it down on the table saw so that it frames out the vents. It actually takes something that would be a little bit unsightly and makes it rather beautiful. So with the trolley, there's all these different parts to it, different zones, and I wanted a few ones very specific for me. I wanted this space over here to make my art. So in here, this is a modified scroll top desk where I tried to remove a lot of the heavy material because it's a solid wood desk. So in the back, I excavated all of the wood and replaced it with either aluminum or cedar so that it was much lighter, and then tried to have it so that it would handle being on the road. So all these little clasps in order to keep my drawers from opening up, and just little bungee cords as well to keep notebooks from just plopping around as I go. Another little thing that I like is I have this cup for pencils, and it's just on a small little peg. That way I can take it off and put it down and move it around, but it still won't go anywhere when I drive. I have a lot of old climbing gear, things that are no longer usable. So things I've used is little pits of climbing gear. These are some cam lobes, as well as these old hexes that were given to me by a good friend. I really like to listen to music. In a space like this, I really feel that it just sets the mood. So what I did was I took this old tube radio that wasn't working, and I integrated it with my job site radio. One day at work, it had fallen off a roof and the back of it totally blew apart, and I just took where the battery went and hardwired it directly into my electrical of the trolley. So this is just a housing that holds the radio, and it's a Bluetooth radio, and I have it wired into some surround sound speakers. Got 2 in the front, 1 in the middle, and then 1 in the back, and it makes a really nice sound in here. So the desk here holds a lot of my electrical systems. On the right side of the desk over here, it has a lot of the systems for the AC power. It has my circuit breakers over here, my inverter, and then it has a little junction box here that I made out of an old cigar case. On the other side, it also has my DC to DC charger. And one little thing that I like to do, it's like a little snippet of steampunk, is that at work one day we lowered a car onto the oxyacetylene torch, busted the regulator, and I took it and I actually integrated it into the grounding cable for the electric. So my grounding wire goes through this oxyacetylene gauge system. Yeah, I got 2 100 amp hour lithium batteries. They're on the floor just behind the desk. There's a nice little area right in front of it where I have my AC to DC charger. A lot of times with my seasonal jobs, I'm parked stationary on a property, sometimes with a tree casting a shadow on my solar panels. So I do have an AC to DC converter. That way I can charge my systems on here for the 12 volt, which I use for my fridge, some of my lighting, and just charging my phone and such. All right, so now let's head up to the front. You can kind of see that it gets pretty bright in here. So what I did was I created these curtains, and they're on a system where they roll up, and they have a triple layer where there's 2 different fabrics as well as an insulation layer on the middle, and they really easily are able to lower. One more over here, and as soon as you lower them, you can really quickly feel that the heat that comes in through the glass pretty quickly goes away. So this is the driver's seat for the trolley. I swapped it with a theater seat from 1920. And it's super cozy to sit in. You lower it down. Man, you could stay here for hours. I've waited years to be able to sit in this seat and to go down the road. And sit in here, it's got a great stance, built-in armrests, super cozy, and it even has a modified seat belt. I found this seat in an antique store in Littleton, New Hampshire. It totally fit the trolley's aesthetic, and it actually fit the space, and it's I think more safe than the original seat that was in here. Yeah, when I pull into a gas stations or I pull over, man, sometimes people will come over and ask where I'm going. And for me, I'm like, oh, I don't know, I think I might go to Moab or go rock climbing, and they're just kind of looking at me all confused. And then I realize, oh, they think I'm on a circuit around town and they want to go to the grocery store. It brings me a lot of joy to really embrace the full trolley conductor. I'll be driving down the road, some little kids will come by, they'll wave, ring the bell, they start laughing. Really just makes me happy. So I redid the entire trolley's front dash. It's made out of quarter sawn white oak, and behind here it houses some of the most complicated wiring I've ever had to work on. You can peel this paneling off, get the gear selector out of the way, and right back here houses some very intricate systems, relays, solenoids, gauges, sending units, all of which is something that I've had to rewire, rework, or completely redesign. The most challenging part about working right here is that there's just steering wheel, so you're limited in this like crazy hunchback, and you're doing this for a few hours at a time. Gosh, you have to just stand up and like get back to it. It's pretty challenging. The trolley provides me a space to be able to do this long term. This is my first home. I'm so grateful for it. If there's any takeaway from whatever this project is that I did here, I think I would just say that any project is going to be challenging, and there's not going to be the perfect time to do this stuff. Like if there's something you want to do, you gotta just do it. You're gonna have to work for it. Like it's gonna require effort. I had to constantly make decisions that were aligned with the path I wanted to go down. I guess the takeaway would be that there's always going to be some trade-off and some sacrifice to make your dreams a reality, and things like this don't just happen easily. I have the freedom to pursue whatever it is I want, and I'm so excited to see what that is.
Thanks for watching this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you soon with another unique home tour.